Back in November of 2013, one of the most powerful storms ever recorded on this planet made landfall. But this wasn't just a storm. It was a force of nature so immense, it would change the meaning of destruction for an entire country. We're going to break down the anatomy of that superstorm, Typhoon Haiyan.
To really wrap your head around Haiyan, you have to start with this one number, 314 kilometers per hour. I mean, that's not just wind, that's the speed of a bullet train. Now imagine that force, not on a track, but as a giant, invisible wall tearing across the heart of the Philippines.
So, the big question is, why the Philippines? Well, the country's geography is a huge part of this story. We're talking about an archipelago, right? Over 7,000 islands, sitting smack in the middle of a major storm highway, right over the warm Pacific Ocean. That beautiful geography also puts it in a constant state of vulnerability.
Now, Haiyan wasn't just any typhoon. It earned the rare title of super typhoon. So what does that even mean? It's the absolute highest classification you can get, a Category 5 storm. And the key thing to understand here is that this isn't just a small step up in power, it's a completely different league of destruction.
Imagine this. It's 4:40 in the morning on November 8, 2013. In the total darkness right before dawn, the storm makes landfall. And right there, a catastrophe began to unfold. Over the next 24 hours, the country would be changed forever.
So let's quickly trace how this monster came to be. Haiyan started as just a ripple, a disturbance over the Pacific, but as it drifted west, it started feeding on the incredibly warm ocean waters, sucking up energy and just rapidly intensifying. It grew and grew until it became that Category 5 beast that slammed into the islands. But you know, the wind was only half the problem. The storm literally pushed a wall of seawater onto the land, a wall that was up to 5 meters high. Try to picture that. A 2-story building made entirely of water, just moving relentlessly inland. This wasn't a flood, it was basically an inland tsunami.
And the effect of that surge? Absolutely devastating. In one of the hardest hit cities, Tacloban, a staggering 90% of the entire area was completely underwater. I mean, the city was almost literally wiped off the map.
So you take that wind, you add that water, and what you get is a humanitarian crisis on a scale that's hard to even comprehend. Over 1 million homes were just gone. Not damaged, not in need of repair, completely destroyed, leaving millions of people with absolutely nothing.
And you know, the horror didn't even stop when the winds died down. In the chaos that followed, with no infrastructure and resources stretched thin, society started to fray. This desperation was captured in reports of violent clashes over basic things like rice. It's just a tragic human dimension to an already awful natural disaster.
Beyond the immediate, heartbreaking human toll, Haiyan left a deep, toxic scar on the environment itself. The storm's impact on the natural world would create challenges that would last for years and years to come.
It was a terrifying chain reaction. The storm's power was so immense that it was tossing massive ships around like they were bath toys. One of them got washed ashore at the port of Estancia, and it started leaking 800,000 liters of oil directly into the coastal ecosystem.
And that single oil spill, combined with sewage and chemicals from destroyed buildings, created this toxic nightmare. Mangrove swamps, which are these vital coastal buffers like natural seawalls, they were contaminated for months. Water sources were poisoned, fishing communities had to stop working, which crippled their incomes, and the risk of infectious diseases just skyrocketed. It was truly a crisis on top of a crisis.
But here's the thing. In the middle of all this overwhelming darkness and devastation, a lifeline started to form. The disaster captured the world's attention, and a massive international relief effort began to get underway.
And the response really came from everywhere. The Philippine government scrambled to set up emergency shelters in any buildings left standing, like the Tacloban basketball stadium. Aid started pouring in from 33 different countries. Huge global companies like Apple and FIFA chipped in, and public figures like the Beckhams helped raise awareness and, crucially, funds.
But even with this incredible global outpouring of support, let's be real, the road to recovery was going to be a marathon, not a sprint. The damage was just so deep and so widespread that there was no way a quick fix was ever going to be possible.
And to give you a sense of just how long that road was, in November 2013, right after the storm, the focus was on immediate survival, finding the living, counting the dead. But fast forward 2 full years. 2 years later, and over 100,000 people were still homeless. The crisis just kept going, long after the world's attention had moved on.
And it wasn't just homes.
We're talking about livelihoods, the very way people fed their families. The economic scars were just as deep. About 75% of the livelihoods that were wiped out belonged to local farmers and fishers. They were the absolute backbone of the regional economy, and they were devastated.
So let's break that down. What does recovery actually look like for just one person? Well, take a coconut farmer. On day one, their entire livelihood is completely wiped out, so they have to start over, planting new trees. But here's the kicker. They then have to wait 5 to 10 years before those new trees will even start to bear fruit and provide an income again. Think about that. A decade-long recovery from a single day's storm. So Typhoon Haiyan was this brutal, unforgettable lesson in the power of nature and the fragility of our world. It showed us the complex, cascading effects of a single event, from the immediate destruction to the long-term environmental and economic pain. And that really leaves all of us with a sobering question. What happens when the next superstorm, potentially fueled by a changing climate, makes its arrival?